Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2024 release Love Lies Bleeding. And I know some people may be saying, Carlin, is this actually a horror film? I wouldn't say it's an outright horror film, but there are definitely horror elements to it. Probably more of like a horror adjacent. It's probably more like a neo-noir crime thriller type film. But the gore goes hard during this, and there definitely are sequences that are very horror related, very nightmarish as well. And it's by the same director who did Saint Maud, and you can see some similarities in the camera work and the imagery and everything that was used in Saint Maud in this film as well. So they do feel connected in certain ways. So anyway, that's why I'm doing it. Plus, the other thing is Emma from Spooky Astronauts also has kind of lumped this in with horror herself. And you know what? Her opinion is good in my books. Anyway, Love Lies Bleeding 2024 release, directed by Rose Glass, who, like I said, did Saint Maud, which I did quite enjoy. I liked Saint Maud more than this film, but I did still like this film and do recommend it. She also did A Moment of Horror, which I have not seen. Written by Glass, as well as Weronika Tofilska, who also wrote A Moment of Horror, so they worked together in the past. This film has Kristen Stewart in it, Dave Franco, Jenna Malone, and Ed Harris, to name the big names. And I'll talk about casting. Overall, the cast was quite good. Overall, the acting was really good. I'll talk about something related to that in a little bit, though, because I'm just going to go through my notes as I kind of put it down. This film I got through Fandango at home, a rental for $6.35 with tax, which the price is right, as they say. I always wait for the newer movies to kind of drop down. That's why I'm never reviewing new movies like the month they come out, or even typically 2 months after they've come out. I'm waiting for that price to drop because I don't make much money on my YouTube channel. I definitely don't make enough to make up for all the films I end up renting or buying, or even like one or two a month. But anyway, quick synopsis. This film is it focuses mainly on Kristen Stewart's character, who is working at a gym. This is set in the 80s, and she ends up noticing this woman who is homeless, who goes and works out at this gym, but they also kind of follow her a little bit with her trying to get her life back on track, trying to get a job, and it becomes obvious that both of these individuals have some checkered pasts, and they come together, and it's kind of what happens when two people who have a lot of trauma and baggage end up getting together, and things go off the rails. And like I said, there's some very horror elements to this film. So it goes there. It goes to many places. But obviously they start up a romance, and I don't want to tell you too much more because the surprise, there are a lot of surprise elements to the film that make it very intriguing. So anyway, I do recommend it. The film feels very well placed in the 80s right out of the gate. They do an excellent job, whether it's the music showing you key items that are very 80s, or the garb, the costumes that people are wearing, very, very 80s. So they do a great job of letting you know immediately without saying it, we're in the 80s right now, which is great. They also do a great job very immediately of establishing characters very quickly, letting you know what a person is about, kind of their overall demeanor, a little bit backstory-wise about them. You know, they're not going to reveal everything about a character as soon as they introduce them, but they do a great job of giving you enough that you feel like within their first scene, you have a good handle on who they are as a person for the most part, and that is great. Like, that shows really good writing to be able to do that. It's shot very well and has a drab color palette. I'm kind of so-so on the drab color palette thing. I think it gets very overused, unfortunately. But shot framing, camera movements look excellent. I really, shot selection. The shooting locations are great. Everything looks really good. Set design is really well done. So from a aesthetic standpoint, it looks very visually pleasing. I'm a fan. Rose Glass has shown that they know exactly what to do when it comes to direction. Still not a fan of Kristen Stewart performances for the most part. That said, I will say this is probably the performance of hers I've enjoyed the most, even though I still didn't love it. I wrote down, it's like she always goes very understated with her characters. And I feel like this was a character in particular who I think needed to be kind of punched up a little bit in the emotion category. Now, it may not have been on her. That may have been something that Glass asked for. So I don't know. It's just historically speaking, that's how her characters have always been in my estimation. And it's just, I don't know. I just don't like the way it comes off. And I think that honestly, even though this is the performance that I've liked the most of hers that I've seen, I think that she ends up paling in comparison performance wise to pretty much everyone else around her, unfortunately. So I would have liked a stronger lead, but that, like I said, that said, it still didn't kill the movie because the writing's good, and like I said, Kristen Stewart did a fine job, but it just wasn't enough for me. But speaking of really good acting jobs, I really need to shout out Ed Harris in this. Did a phenomenal job, as did Katie O'Brien. Those two, Ed Harris and Katie O'Brien, were the two that really, really stick out from this film. Like, super stick out from this film. They nailed their characters. Their characters are interesting. They brought so much life to them. They were like breathing these characters. It was pretty great. The score for this film is interesting because it's not full on 80s, but it definitely is 80s inspired enough to fit the film and the time period. So I love when people do that where they're just like, it's not like, hey, we're going for 80s, we're going to take actual music from the 80s and just throw it in there or make it sound exactly like the 80s. It's this interesting thing where it kind of straddles the 80s and now, so you kind of feel like the film isn't just in the past, it feels like it could be very much tied to the current, which is a very interesting thing that I observed with the score that I really liked about it. The film feels steeped in masculinity, which is intentional and pulled off very well. I think they did a great job about that, or job with that, and I think that was the steeping into masculinity is a key part, I think, of what they're really trying to say with this film. I'm not obviously going to go down that route because I want people to just watch the film and kind of experience it for themselves. But yeah, I think they did a great job setting that up. The dialogue and characters are very well written and really do come to life, in my opinion. You really end up feeling for certain characters and hating other characters, and that just shows that the writers really did their job and they know how to do it effectively. Like I said before, there's some gruesome stuff in this. One scene in particular that is quite gruesome that you get like a full-on shot of. I wish they had lingered on that shot a little bit longer just because it would have had even more impact, but it has great impact as is. I just kind of wish it would have been a longer shot just because, well, I mean, mainly because I just wanted to see how those practical effects were really put together because it looks so good. At least the quick flash I got of it looks so good. The pacing is quite good until something big happens in the film, and then it really seems to stall for a bit. The good news is it doesn't stay stalled for too long. It feels like it stalls for maybe like 20-25 minutes, and then it kind of picks back up and gets going. So it's a little bit of a hiccup in the script, in my opinion, where it seemed like they got a little bit aimless. They meandered a little too much, got a little too repetitive, and they just didn't know where to go. It just kind of seems like people were walking around seeming a little bit lost film-wise. But then they find it, and they kind of finish pretty strongly, I think. As things are revealed late in the movie, it definitely increases the impact of the film. So I love that aspect of it. They really did a pretty good job of fleshing the core story out, which is something that's been a problem for a lot of horror films that I've watched recently, especially more independent ones, which this isn't independent, it's an A24 film. And St. Maud was as well. So Glass continuing to work with A24, which is great because I think they're doing a wonderful job, and I think they're pretty at home with A24, and I look forward to what they have to put out next. So out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I'm going to give it a 3.5-star rating. Close to giving it that 4, but I don't think it's quite there. And I gave St. Maud a 4, I believe, but it's not quite there. Or maybe I give it 3.5. I think I gave St. Maud a 4. But yeah, so St. Maud a bit better, but this still is a pretty solid flick. So yeah, Love Lies Bleeding. Do you want to talk about it? Do you have different opinions on it? Go ahead and put it in the comments. I would love to hear that, and consider other people's point of views on this film. Or if we're the same, we can nerd out about that. We can do spoilers in the comments. That's totally fine. Thumbs up on this video if you liked it at all, or you just want to support me. I appreciate that. Subscribing to my channel, I appreciate even more. I do love that. Great way to say thank you. And you can hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. But regardless, I thank you very much. I really do, for taking your time to watch this. It always is very humbling to me that people actually take time out of their day to watch me just sit here and talk to a camera about movies. Just because I view myself as just some guy, like, who has an interest. But I appreciate it. So thank you very much. And until next time, keep it brutal.